And we're live. Welcome, everyone, to Everything is Attitude. We always have 10 seconds of awkward silence kind of sitting there before the broadcast begins, right, Rosemary? I'll let Rosemary do the full introductions, but we have a special guest, Jeff, here today. And of course, Rosemary's here as well. Welcome, both of you.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Yes.
Yep. So
Is it
to
over to
you,
me?
to you, Rosemary. Yes.
Over to me. Welcome, everybody. Hi. Well, of course, it's Friday. Everything is attitude. I'm here with my co-host Al Pisano, and we have a special guest, Jeff. I don't know whether to say your last name or not, Jeff. I don't know how much you want us to. Do you care?
Sure, yeah, that's
So,
fine.
and we have Jeff Galuzzo with us also. So, as our special guest today. In Everything is Attitude, as you all know, what we try to do is we try to talk about things that are important to each of us in our different lives. We like to have our guests on. Some guests come on and they talk about situations where they're struggling with their attitude. The situation is an ongoing one and they're struggling with their attitude now. And we try to give them help and advice, as we did last week. And we had a great success, I think, because the couple that we had on last week really seemed to benefit greatly. Al, you can talk about that in a little bit for us. Maybe mention how they're coming on the show, help them. But Jeff, I know Jeff. I'm going to tell you, I've known Jeff for how many years? A lot of years.
Almost 15.
And Jeff and his wife came to see me a long time ago. Jeff, I've been really looking forward to having you on the show because Jeff really does have a story that is so inspiring, very painful to him. It's a sad story, but it has a lot of positives to it, I think, as well. So, Jeff, I'm going to hand over to you. And you can tell us your story. You can talk about whatever you like. If you want to just talk cooking, we can just talk cooking if you want, if you change your mind. But let's go over to Jeff and we'll just see how we progress. This is a live show for everybody. So, if we get thunder and lightning and I suddenly go off air, you'll know all about it. You won't see me anymore. That'll be it. It'll be done. We've got a tornado coming in at about 15, 20 miles away from where I live, and we're just getting the backlash of that. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we don't have any, interference. Jeff, over to you.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to Rosemary and to Al for having me on here this evening. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
I've got a little bit of a cold, so I might be sniffling a little bit.
Why is it that men always want to complain about these things? Women just get on with it. Men just moan and complain.
Just grin and bear it. Tough it out. I've been really fortunate to know Rosemary now for almost 15 years. My wife Andrea and I have really learned a lot, and we've had an opportunity to really get to know Rosemary on a personal level as friends, and that's been a real gift as well. It's definitely enhanced our lives, and we really appreciate you and all that you do for everybody, and we see that.
Likewise. Reciprocal.
This journey that I've been on for the last few years, so many years, is really my introduction to Rosemary, if you will, came with the passing of our oldest son, Eric. And Eric took his own life almost 15 years ago. And that was a horrendous time. I had the opportunity this past spring to write a story about that experience, which I had written journals. I had done a lot of writing over the years with counseling help and others. But this practice was one that Rosemary had recommended and actually challenged some of her listeners and watchers on YouTube to do this challenge, which was...
Wait, we're talking about the 3 chairs here?
Yeah. The 3 chairs. And that really, for me, was a good refresher. And I mean that, and I truly mean that. It was good because I was able to revisit how I felt when I heard the news that Eric passed. And that was something that haven't really embraced over the years. Certainly, that particular feeling of shock. I listened to one of your other shows recently, and it was the wind was really taken out of my sails that day. I had a really difficult time for quite a spell. I do carpentry work, so I was having a hard time reading a tape measure for a number of months. Fortunately, I was able to just work on some projects at home and kind of move through my days. But after a few months, probably 7 or 8 months after Eric had passed, we had the opportunity to go visit with Rosemary, and the affirmations and the reality of his presence that we came to understand through Rosemary was really affirming and healing. It is still the single most profound healing experience that we had, knowing that Eric was okay and that he keeps a good eye on us. He's got a great sense of humor. He's got a wonderful smile, and he shows up for me. I know that a lot of people assign meanings to things out there in life, and one of the things that has happened for us is that we get regular visits from bald eagles, and it's an amazing experience for me to feel that and to see that.
Eagles being very important to me, because of course Grey Eagle and eagles being very important. It's the eagles are, I think you consider them a sign to you, don't you, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Andrea, you consider them a sign from the spirit world, from your son, from it's a, when you see an eagle, it's an affirmation of a life, your son still living and still continuing to learn, to grow, and to be around you. Would you say that's a fair?
Absolutely. And one of the things I've been involved with some spiritual practices for about 25 years, and in one of the ceremonies,
this was before your son passed, before
Eric passed, right?
Yes.
So I had some experiences with a language around nature that I really had never heard before and didn't know too much about. And in one of the ceremonies that I attended, I was actually given a name, and the name is Spotted Eagle, and it's a wonderful name. And it's in Lakota. It's another way to say it, but I won't do that right now. But so I've been given that gift as well, and you know. I'm at a loss for words at this moment, just thinking about all of the experiences that we've had between my experiences with the native people out west and the people here in the east since Eric passed.
We were talking this morning briefly about you coming on the show, Jeff, and you said something to me that you and I and of course Al, we know and understand this, but a lot of people who are listening, a lot of people who are out there don't necessarily understand. We were talking about how you put it, how people compartmentalize.
Right.
They have the spiritual, they have the, what else was it you said? There were three things.
Mental, spiritual, and physical.
And physical, that's right. So people go to church on a Sunday and then they're done.
Right.
They get on with the emotional, the mental stuff, whether they go to work, whether you're home seeing to the kids or whatever it is you're doing on a mental level. And then, of course, you've got the physical, trying to keep yourself fit or eating or not keeping yourself fit or whatever it is you do. But people, I think, generally tend to compartmentalize these things. And can you remember what you were saying to me this morning when you mentioned when people go through a trauma or a tragedy or a difficult time? I'd like you to say, we were talking about, it's only in those times that we tend to, those three things connect together, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, the physical, when you can actually put them all together and see that you cannot separate it. Can you remember saying that to me? Can you give us some thoughts on that?
One of the one of the things that I realize is I have a good friend who says almost what you just said. Don't wait for Sunday to pray.
Yeah.
And I have some good friends that I mentor and help out with recovery issues, and I always tell them the same thing. I said every morning you get up and you say a prayer of gratitude. You give a list of thank yous. You're underneath sheets. You're in a bed. You're inside a home. You maybe have food to eat. You have clothes to put on. That attitude of gratitude, being grateful, is the beginning, and it's been a practice of mine for years,
Everything is attitude.
and it really is. It's hard to be bitter. It's hard to be bitter when you're grateful.
Yes.
Those two things don't line up.
Um,
They don't
can I
support
just
one another.
can I just say we talked about going to church on Sunday. It is also true. I think, you talked about don't I think I know the friend you're talking about. I think I know him
You do.
well. Don't wait to pray is something that you would absolutely expect him to say, and also for me to say. But I think that people don't necessarily think to pray on a daily basis, as you're suggesting. People, pray when there's trouble,
Hmm.
when something is happening in their lives, when they need help and guidance. Amazingly, a lot of people who say they don't believe in God will get down on their knees and pray
Right.
when there's something desperate going on in their lives, which is fine,
Right.
because you don't necessarily have to pray to God, to that being, to that super, whoever, however people view God or don't view God. The
Hmm.
universe and the many universes are out there hold all of this energy, and our thoughts, prayers, are simply our thoughts being extended out and beyond us. Sort of, we're guiding them or directing them to whatever higher power we might think is out there. But we do tend to do that fervently. We fervently pray, please God, help me, please God, what shall I do, please, and so on. But you're talking about a different kind of praying. You're talking about the prayer of thanks, I think, and the
Right.
prayer of
Right.
saying thank you. Now, because this is a show about everything is attitude, and we like to give recipes for people because there are so many people out there, Jeff, who are going through a difficult time, a loss of one kind or another. Your loss was extremely traumatic. You have a child who takes his own life,
Hmm.
and that's got to be hard to come back from, right?
Yeah, I don't think I'm the same person, so I don't know if I came back from it. I
that
think it
that's really good, actually.
I
That's
think it
very,
really, I
very good
think it really
point.
it changed me. There's one of the experiences and one of the things that we've shared, my wife and I have shared, is that our good friends, people who love us dearly, all around us, we are so blessed in that regard. They all want you to be okay. So they have a timeline when it's time for you to be okay, as far as they're concerned.
Yes.
Because they're uncomfortable, and I get it. They had a loss as well. But our healing doesn't have anyone else's timeline on it. It's our own. One of the big things that happened was everyday life got really kind of unimportant. Everyday life that was just kind of going along was just didn't have the power that it had before Eric passed. And what I mean by that is that I didn't get worked up about little incidentals, a long line at the grocery store, or my credit card didn't work, or whatever, some little thing that would
What we suddenly realize is the minutia, the
exactly.
the little stuff, the unimportant stuff, that
And
before we have a traumatic situation happen to us, we could get worked up about the little things, and all of a sudden we sort of face with an issue where we realize that the little things don't matter so much anymore, right?
right, exactly. I've got an anecdotal story. When we were at the memorial service for our son, a dear friend I was thinking while you were talking about people waiting for trauma or waiting for the big event to actually embrace community, however that, whatever shape that takes. And that to me is a spiritual action. Well, this lady came to me. We had actually separated in the hall. There were so many people there that we didn't want to have a receiving line.
We meaning you and your family.
Andrea, my wife, and my son Ben,
Yeah.
and myself, and we split up because Ben's friends were there, Andrea's friends, and obviously we had common friends as well. But we just felt like that would be a good thing to do. So I was standing off to the side, and a lady came up and gave me a hug, and she said in this straight face, as meaning heartfelt as it could be, "I know how you feel." She said, "I just lost my cat."
Oh,
A month or so ago. Well, I'm sure it was a moment of her grasping at something that she could do to help me. And I gave her a big hug, and I was over her shoulder and I was laughing. And this is the day of this memorial service. And it just, I realized in that moment that there is no hierarchy to loss.
there is not. Your
There
pain,
are-
I say to people, your pain is your pain. People don't understand when somebody suffers. We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, because we did a show on losing pets and so on. People don't always understand, especially if you're a person who's never had a pet yourself or has never been invested in an animal. They don't understand the pain that somebody feels with the loss of a pet, especially if that person doesn't have children, doesn't have family, and that pet is the only thing they have.
Right.
And I always say to people, your pain is your pain. But we were talking on our Thursday show. Somebody asked, I don't even remember what the question was now. I think it was something about grief or grieving. And she was saying she cries all the time and she felt really bad about it. And I said to her, nobody ever should feel badly about grieving. And there is, as you just said, Jeff, there is no timeline. There is
Right.
no timeline for, when your grief ends. And
Right.
the truth is that I think when you're a parent who has lost a child, you will never stop grieving. You
Right.
learn to live with it. Would you agree? You learn to live with it. You learn to deal with it in certain ways, but you're always grieving and you're always missing a part of you.
The story of the lady trying to comfort me, there's a couple of things going on. One is that in our culture, from what I perceive and what I see out there, and from my own experience, we have a lot of loss on a regular basis throughout our lives. Small things. We change jobs. We moved to Colorado from New York. Al, I know that I don't know if I should have said that, but we make changes.
That's fine. That's fine.
In that change, there are losses. There people that we used to see we don't see as often, things like that. And I think that we use, say, a funeral or a memorial service as a way of letting that all out. So that's when it happens, and you'll see people. It strikes me as odd sometimes that people are really, really grieving and they didn't know the person all that well. And I realize that they've got just this stuff that it ties in with the prayer. We don't take care of these things along the way. We don't have an opportunity to do that very much with the communities that we live in. And I've been really fortunate that I have sought that out. And some of it's been with you. Some of it's been with recovery work that I've done. Some of it's been with the Native people. But I have go-to people everywhere. And it's wonderful for me. And I don't wait. I try not to wait.
Having those go-to people, would you say that that's a positive towards you having a positive attitude?
By all means. By all means.
If we were to sort of thinking about the people who are watching, Al, I'd like to come in to you in a minute and have your comments or point of view on things. But if we were, Jeff, looking, and Al, in fact, if we were looking for ingredients for our recipe for life, which is what we do try to do here, looking at somebody else who is going through a loss, and it doesn't matter whether it's the loss of a cat, whether it's the loss of a dog, a child, whatever, because your loss is your loss, right? to me, the worst kind of loss has to be, as a mother, has to be the loss of a child. But I do understand other people might feel differently. So, what ingredients do we need for this recipe for trying to help us through the suffering and trying to help us through the loss? Now, I can tell you that we mentioned prayer would be one ingredient. We mentioned gratitude, and I can tell you from my own experience, because I talk to parents all over the world who have lost their children. Gratitude is not high among it. It's not high among our inclinations.
Right.
When they've lost a child, the last thing they're actually feeling very often is gratitude. It's more like the opposite. It's more like anger, frustration, sometimes even envy. Why did this happen to us and not her? People compare, for instance, bad parents who abuse the children. Why did they not suffer?
Mhm.
Why you who are good parents? And so can I, and I've heard this before, and I can hear people, even as they're listening to this, saying, when you lose a child, how on earth can you find that gratitude? Can you enlighten us a little bit with that, Jeff?
A message that was given to me just about a year after Eric passed. I was up in Alberta, Canada, and a big, tall man who lives up there, who you've met,
I know, big guy.
hugged me. He had also lost a child to cancer.
You didn't say ugly, did you?
Pardon me?
You didn't say ugly.
No, I didn't. He's handsome.
I thought I heard you say ugly. Sorry.
No.
Yes.
No.
He's a good looking guy. He's a big guy.
But he hugged me and he whispered in my ear, when you lose one, you gain many. And that took me back because I immediately felt the love that he was giving me. I didn't have to earn it or be worthy of it or anything. I just felt it. I felt that love just in that statement. And it resonated with me because we had been just embraced by so many people. And that, I think, was the ingredient, and I'll use the word love, not conditional love. There's a lot of that out there because some people just don't know how to do it any other way. If you do this, then you'll get that kind of a thing. But we were embraced and we were loved for so long that it was really hard not to be conscious of that. And I think that love is a key. Give that as a person now who's been through this kind of an experience, and many others, because I've got a lot of friends and I'm aging, so a lot of people are aging beyond me, and I try to show that love and compassion to those people without saying call me if you need me. Well, no, go show up. Take them a half a dozen donuts, knock on the door and say, here's a donut for you. Do you want to talk? Yes or no? Okay, I'm out of here, or I'm not.
So we've got some nice ingredients here. The one thing that comes out of listening to you is taking an action. Don't just use the words, if you need me, I'm here.
Right.
Or call me if you'd like to. Even I'm talking about those who are suffering and those who are friends and family. Even though you're suffering yourself, it's really good if you can try to put yourself out there to, and to go and knock on somebody's door, even if it's to say help. So we require a lot of bravery for that. So that's one ingredient. We require bravery, courage, whatever it is. We require, I think, part one of the ingredients has to be, taking an action.
Mhm.
to either to not sit at home and steep yourself in the grief, to even if it's just to go out and take a walk, uh, go out there and visit, go to church, wherever it is. Would you agree?
I went to the local bank probably 3 weeks after the memorial service, and a woman who I know very well. She's kind of the receptionist at a big bank in town. She took me right off to the side and almost scolded me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I was just coming to make a deposit or something. And it was, again, for me, trying to have some normalcy and not being afraid to step
Right.
out in public,
So normalcy,
whatever
try
that is.
to try to create that normalcy.
Right.
Again,
And
not easy. Not
what
easy.
she said to me was, "Call us anytime. We'll take care of that for you." And I just said, I just needed to get out of the house.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. To take a walk, take a breath, and so on. Sort of these actions are tough to do, but little baby steps. And the more you take these actions, the more you mix these ingredients together in this nice big fat bowl, the more you make a recipe that can carry on through your life. And when you start to begin to heal a little bit yourself, then reach out to other people who are in similar situations, who are going through a trauma or a difficulty as well. Because I think there are so many people out there who've had a loss like yours or similar, and you have such a wealth of wisdom that to help others who are going through the same situation. And I know that it's hard to sort of allow other people with the same situation to talk about their situation, because it brings back your situation, but at the same time it's all a healing process. Talking, allowing people to talk to you, going out into the community, and just trying to create a very positive path of normalcy, even though when everything around you is not normal at all.
Right.
Just hold on to the fact that you can do this. Al, let's hear from you, because you've been so quiet throughout all of this. I'm bringing you in here.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm hearing, and the only thing I could ever offer at this point is support. And I have with friends who've lost children, and I can't imagine it. And thank you for just being able to articulate everything so well, Jeff. I mean, and communicate what you went through so really so well. And the thing that stands out to me is that you do need to surround yourself, from your own words, surround yourself with people that could help you, but hopeful that those people don't have expectation in that support, right? That they are there for you just to be there, and don't expect you to act or react a certain way. That the person that's lost the child is the one that drives conversation, is the one that will reach out for a hug, is the one that dictates how the support will go. Is that correct, Jeff?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a dear friend. We were at our house for a couple of days before the memorial service, and a friend of mine flew from Montana with me, because I was in Montana when Eric passed. And a friend flew with me, and people were coming to the house with so much food and refreshments, and they were just coming and coming and coming. It was nonstop, an unbelievable gift. But Andrea and I couldn't shut off because people were coming to the house. Finally, he stood at the door, locked the door, and said, "They're not receiving anyone right now." He decided that we needed a rest. And he's a person that I could really take that from. If, for instance, Rosemary, if you were the one doing that, she knows. And for me, he knew. And he shut the door and gave us like 3 hours. And he came in and he said, "I'm not going to let anybody in. I'll take the gifts. I'll take their cards. I'll make sure that you know who it is, and I'll get their names." That was perfect. It was the perfect way to help. And that's that.
I think that another way that people can help themselves is to not to be afraid. And we talked about gratitude, not to be so grateful that all of the neighbors and all of the friends are coming that you can't say stop.
Right.
You know, it's very nice. This is what people do. It's very nice when they bring you food, they bring this, that, the other. Everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to be there for you. Everybody wants to, you know, God forbid this should happen to them. They want to be there to support you. And very often people who are grieving for whatever reason, for whether, you know, they somebody lost their 90-year-old mother or somebody lost their 5-year-old child, it doesn't matter, because grief is grief. But there is this feeling sometimes that people have that because everybody around them is being so good and they're bringing food and they're bringing this, that, and the other, that they feel somewhat obliged to smile and nod.
Right.
When all you're really doing is you're putting on a performance, because all you really want to do is just go away somewhere, hide, cry, you know, beat your chest, scream at the top of your voice, whatever it is you want to do. But people are being so nice that you're nodding and smiling, and consequently you're not dealing with what's going on with you.
Right.
So I would say to people out there, I'm hoping you, again, I'm looking to you to agree with me because you're the one who's gone through this, Jeff. I would say to people going through this, don't be afraid to say to people, lock the door, sorry, not at home right now, whatever it is. Put a big sign on the door, lock the door, whatever, unplug the phones, give yourselves a breathing space, breathing time. If that breathing time, lasts more than a day, I personally would come and beat on your door and say enough now. But
Right.
you do need 2 or 3 hours out of every day, maybe a little more. And as the grieving process proceeds, you might need less and less, and then all of a sudden you might need a lot more, and because that's what grieving is about, isn't it?
It sure is.
You think you're doing okay, and all of a sudden something happens or not, and you just, for no reason, sometimes you have one of those awful black days. So I'm saying to people who are out there and who are suffering with the loss, do not be afraid to say, not right now. Thank you very much, but not right now. But I would like to talk about the opposite of this too, because I think this is very important for people because honestly, really, Jeff, you've seen it, I'm sure. You've even seen it. You lost your dad fairly recently. We've all seen it. All of us who have suffered a loss. I'm very fortunate. I've not really had too much in the way of loss in that regard. But there's a point where it's almost as if people decide that you're okay now. So you've got this massive influx of people, and the neighbours are bringing all their stuff and all the rest of it, and all of a sudden there's 2 or 3 weeks go by, and then people move on with their lives, and it's either all or nothing at all.
Right.
1 minute you've got everybody, and the next minute it's as if people are saying, whether on a conscious level or whether on a subconscious level, people are saying, oh, well, it's been a month now. Yeah, hey, they'll be fine.
Right.
And I think the opposite is true. I think when people say, oh, it's been a month, it's been 6 weeks, or it's been a couple, it's been 3 months, that they should be on their feet now. I think that is absolutely not the right thing, because I think it's when all of a sudden people disappear and you're on your own and you're lonely. We just talked about wanting time, having time. That's different than all of a sudden feeling, because I think what happens often is all of a sudden you feel abandoned, because where were those people? And now they're not there anymore, and people are just presuming that you're getting on with your life. And I think after the shock wears off, the reality sets in, and that's when I think you need your friends, you need people around you from time to time, and I think that people who have never suffered a loss perhaps don't understand that. What would you say about that, Jeff?
that description that you just made is exactly a lesson that I learned from our experience, and what I have kind of a I have a hard time, and I think everybody does. I have a difficult time going to funerals, quote unquote. I generally,
I actually
I,
don't usually go.
I generally, if it's someone close to me, I'll go to the visiting hours. I won't necessarily go to the formal service. A month, 6 weeks out, I'll take a card, an uplifting card, not necessarily a sympathy card, and not a cartoon, but just a nice message, and I'll go visit the person for that reason. Because that time afterwards really is, it's real, and it is lonely and it's scary. But I again, because we live in the community where we are, and we have so many people from both sides of our family, we've always been here. It was really easy to bump into folks. But I've made it a practice to wait a month, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. Maybe it slips my mind, and 3 months into it, I'll remember, and I'll make an intention, and I'll go get a card. I'll handwrite a message, and I'll go deliver it. I don't mail it, I go deliver it.
And I think that I've because of what I do, I've experienced this. So this is where my knowledge comes from. I mean, I've seen people. I'm the one who does go, you
Right.
know, not just prior to perhaps somebody passing, if somebody's sick, certainly at that point of, and afterwards with my patients, because my patients are not just my patients, that entire family are my
Right.
patients. We as healers in my healing group, we embraced the entire family. And I would remind my healers and taught my students that the importance is not just to be there at the moment, because there are so many people there at the moment, but to be there once everybody else has dispersed, once the initial, everybody now is thinking, oh well, in the immediate shock of something, or the immediate sympathy is the bringing of the food and the so on and so forth, and then people get on with their lives. But what I'm advising people to do, all of you out there who are helping or going through or suffering yourself, it is the weeks after, please understand, it's the weeks after that people need support. It's not in the immediate. Of course, we need it in the immediate. Of course we do. But it's much more important to continue that, and even a year down the way, or however long it takes for someone to get back on their feet, to get back into some semblance of reality. Even a year or 2 years or even 5 years, you still need people that you can talk to and that you can express your grief to. Would you agree with that, Jeff?
Absolutely. Yeah. In one of the native cultural experiences that I've learned about is a ceremony called wiping of the tears. And what that means is that a year to the day, the family that had the loss will put a feast on for the community, because they were supported for a year to grieve. They're still going to continue to grieve. Nobody erases the slate and says, okay, you're done now, but you're welcomed back into the community wholly by the community, and you give all of them a gift of some token gift from the person that passed away. Maybe it's maybe it's a button off a shirt, or some little thing that you give to them, and you feed the whole community. You put a feast on, and it's a beautiful way of doing it.
We were talking, Al, I'm not sure which show we were talking about, and it might have even been the Thursday show, I don't remember, but do you remember I was saying about how in our Western culture, we don't have anything like that. We don't do anything like that. And it's very frustrating for me, because we teach our children about birthing, about life, about the beginnings of life. We teach in the schools, we teach, to celebrate life. But in the Western culture particularly, we don't teach about death. We don't necessarily have those ceremonies and those celebrations and those things that, throughout the year or two or however long, where we can express ourselves. I mean, I think in the Latin communities they have the Day of the Dead once a year. They celebrate
Right.
the dead. They go out there, but they celebrate it. They enjoy it. They embrace it. They teach their children to embrace death. It's a weird thing to say, but they do. But in our Western world, we don't do that. So, maybe I should start up a school where we have some celebration or another, where we can, every time, when we've lost someone, we should, or maybe just simply as you did, Jeff. And I think this helped your attitude. You adopted a lot of the Native American culture,
Right. I
which
did.
I
And
think
and
helped you.
and I was reminded, and I have been reminded more than once by you.
By me? Me?
Will you please be
What?
quiet? He's right here. And the Day of the Dead, those ceremonies recognize the spiritual life of our soul and ourselves, and that's what's lacking. It's we don't recognize that they're here.
You
And
mean Jeff? You mean Jeff? When I tell you, if you just shut up and listen, you'll hear him.
all right, so
Is
can
that, is that
I
what
give
you
you?
mean?
Yes,
Al
and
knows all about that, don't you, Al?
I'm grateful.
Yes.
Oh
Al,
man.
what are you thinking? You're
Um,
sitting there, you're listening to all of this. What are you thinking
yes.
there?
Yes. So I'm thinking about the support too, and I love that tradition that you went through, Jeff, where you celebrated after a year and everybody acknowledged it. I think, as a support group in general, like I make it a habit of putting someone who's lost someone's birthday in my phone, or the anniversary of the death, and just shoot a text even, or a phone call, say, hey, how you doing today? And again, without expectation, but just to let people know you're there. It doesn't hurt to put something in your calendar, and shoot a little reminder to someone who's lost, someone that they cared about and loved. And I actually have a question for you, Jeff. And we've had a number of really cool ingredients for this recipe. And oddly, I was going to ask that same question with that rosemary you described before, where you have all this support in the beginning, and then there's that lull. For those who've more recently lost a child, and you've given a lot of good advice and ingredients, but if there was a paramount thing that sort of got you through that time, once it was sort of radio silence and less people were around to support you, was it getting out? Was it being with others? Like, what was the most poignant thing that got you through the day-to-day stuff after you lost your son? That's what I would love to understand myself, and hopefully people out there could find it helpful that have, like I said, more recently gone through something like this.
There's two things. The two words that popped into my mind was prayer and seeking normalcy. Not trying to fill the void, but just doing the next right thing, mowing the grass, doing some things that were just part of my everyday life. Because that I was not able to do that for a few months. He passed in April, so we were coming into summertime, which in Maine is a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And so the normalcy, but I had done a lot of work toward accepting, and I'll use the words, a higher power, God, creator. I had done a lot of work before Eric passed, and I really feel like I was prepared. I was given something before he went to help me when that happened. And in the day of his service, of his memorial service, I walked down to a river and I looked up at the sky, And I was doing some of the bargaining that Rosemary was talking about before. What if only, shoulda, coulda, woulda. The dynamic, it's a squirrel cage. And that squirrel cage, man, you've got to move your feet fast to stay ahead of it because it just takes you over. And I looked up and I said, how am I going to be able to do this? How is this experience going to help me or others? Show me what I can do. And within almost no time, somebody had called me about a young person who'd taken their lives and asked if I could talk to their dad. And I went and met the guy at a coffee shop, and I didn't know him. I went and had a cup of coffee with him and let him talk. And it was only a few months, maybe 3 months after Eric passed. I didn't feel like I was doing anything. I wasn't going to fix anything. I had no answers. I don't, you know,
You were
but
just there to listen.
but I went and, I asked for that and boom, there it was. And timelines for us are difficult. I think time is a lot quicker, or, 3 months. I felt like my prayer was answered. When I got that call, I said, okay, I'll show up. All right, I'll do what I was asked. I asked if I could help. Now I can help. So I don't know. I guess continued meditation, and for me, it's about. And Rosemary's taught me, not personally to do this, but I've been aware of her teachings for years, and I am learning from that to learn to meditate, to learn to get quiet. And my native friend Jim told me the first time that I went to sit for a few days in the woods by myself, initially to listen for 7 sounds. And he just said, listen for 7 sounds. You don't have to do anything else. Don't worry about it. Your mind's going to get busy. You're going to be out there. Your mind's going to get busy. Listen for 7 sounds. So that's what I was doing when Eric passed. I already had that. I had some experience with that, so it wasn't like I had to go seek it out and begin from scratch, so to speak. I had some elementary things that I knew what to do. And one was to ask, how can I help? And that's an attitude of gratitude. I wasn't grateful in that moment, but I was practicing something, putting myself in the place where I was going to be given, if I was open to it, so connecting spiritually and doing the little tasks,
I think
asking for help, asking people to come and help me, which I did.
I think this brings us back to what I said earlier, which is people who have gone through a loss, they have so much wisdom and so much knowledge, we don't even know we've got it. So being able to put yourself out there and wait for people to come to you, people come to talk to you. People are sometimes looking for the miracle of, if I could wave a magic wand, what would I do? There is no magic wand, is there? But just being able to sit and listen to people and having that, as hard as difficult it is for people out there who have suffered a loss such as this, to try to, say that prayer of gratitude, even if you don't mean it, say it anyway, and just keep saying it. It's like the mantra, keep saying it until it begins to mean something to you, and keep saying it until you do start to feel a little better and you do start to feel a little bit more wholesome. Even if you think God has forsaken you, keep saying that prayer of gratitude if you can, even if you have to say it through gritted teeth.
Yeah.
Just keep saying that your prayer and applying that gratitude, and that means that you're then open and you're out there. And once you allow yourself to be open, yes, it's painful, no doubt about it whatsoever, but once you open up and you can accept that you can stand the pain, because I'm a great believer in the fact that God never ever gives us more than we can handle.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm a great believer in that. And so I think, that God really never, even though some people listening might think, well, don't know, this time around, he seemed to have really given me something I can't handle. But if you can just have, it's all right for people to say, I believe in God and I have faith, when nothing tests it. It's a whole different thing to actually live your faith on a daily basis, every day, to live it, meaning living it means trusting even when you don't want to, being grateful even when you're not. Living your faith is a hard thing to do on a daily basis. But I think that, part of the ingredients all of those ingredients, if we combine all of those ingredients together, mix them up, how do we make that work? We trust even when we can't. We believe even when we don't want to. And we grit our teeth and we say, I trust. I'm trying my very best to be grateful. Even when you say, God, please help me, because we all say that sometimes, but truly believe that if you give him a chance, then he will help you. God never gives us anything, I believe, that we cannot handle. I think I hate to say this because I could keep talking, Jeff, for another hour or two here, but I think we're pretty much almost out of time. So Al, I'm going to ask you if you have a brief comment to make, and then Jeff, I'll come to you, and then we'll sort of wind up. We got a few more minutes. We're okay for a few more minutes, but I'm just aware that time
Right.
is ticking a little bit. So Al?
Yeah, I would love to do this another time too, because I think Jeff, the way, like I said before, you articulate and communicate what you went through, and sort of the examples or the practices you do every day on a daily basis to sort of get through it. I hope resonates with everyone. It's important. It's an important thing, probably in my mind, one of the most important things to address those grieving the loss of a child. So I would love it if we could do this again with you, Jeff.
Thank you. I'd be honored. You know,
Jeff?
I attitude, being a fire retrospective,
Oh gosh.
fire
Don't I
sign.
know it? So just if I can just clarify for people who are thinking he's a what?
You clarify it.
We're referring to soul signs.
I am referring to soul signs. And if for any of you listeners or viewers or people that will see this, check out that book that Rosemary put together. It's a wonderful exercise. It's called Soul Signs. She didn't put me up to this. I'm telling you, it's a great tool. It's a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
It really helps.
That could be one of the ingredients. Having soul signs by your side. I know
By
that
all
there
means.
are certain people who use it as a Bible because it is an amazing tool. But yes, you were saying being a fire sign, and the worst, I think, of all
Not the
soul signs.
worst. It's not the worst. It's the most difficult.
Look, I'm an earth sign. Hey, I'm coming from my perspective. Let me put it another way.
Well,
I believe that fire sign retrospectives probably have the most difficult time of all of us, sorting out their emotions, sorting out relationships, sorting out their own emotions and their own inner turmoil. So you're coming from you're a disadvantaged if you're a retrospective soul. In some ways you're disadvantaged, but on the other hand, you are, retrospectives are so very, very sensitive. They're really hard to take, especially for an earth sign like me. But a retrospective soul who works hard on their spiritual growth, you can't get a better person, you can't get a better soul sign once they start to work on themselves. But being a fire sign and a retrospective soul, yes. Yes.
the difficulty. While you were just talking, I was realizing that thinking about gratitude, thinking about having a positive attitude, I realized that as a fire sign, I have a I have a doubt. I have a certain agnostic view of things. And that isn't all about religion. I just don't trust authority or necessarily trust that at face value initially. And I've come to accept through reading that book and doing a lot of other work that people just are. They are who they are. They're born into a certain way, and that's all there is to it. Doesn't mean I don't get conflicted and rub against people still, and I will until the day I'm on the other side, I'm sure. But I have less desire to be right. And the reason that I wanted to be right was because I was so afraid all the time. And if I was wrong, then I was somehow vulnerable. But if I'm right, I'm in charge.
Yes.
And that was a fantasy. I didn't know it, but that was a fantasy.
Yeah.
And understanding that it's okay not to know. I don't have to know anything. I'll be all right. I'm going to be.
And it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I didn't even want to say that. I didn't want to say that. I don't like being wrong.
Oh gosh, that must have been painful for you to say that.
Oh man. And I want to thank you two both, and for Rosemary to be a witness to all the things that you've done, the books that you've written, the people that you've helped. It's just been a huge gift.
This is not accolades to Rosemary thing.
Well, it is, and I thank you. That's my attitude of gratitude.
Thank you. Well,
So
thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for all your advertising. That's not why you came on here.
No.
So, all right, to everybody who is out there, if you want to know more about our Everything is Attitude show, you need to, Al's going to put up the info at everythingisattitude.com. If you need to know more about Al, you can email him al at alpisano.com.
Correct. Yep.
P-I-S.
Correct.
A-N-O, Pisano.
Our friend.
Al at alpisano.com. If you need to know more about me, or you want to sort of email me for whatever reason, you can email me as long as you're nice. Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. We just ditch all the emails that aren't so nice, so it'd be a waste of your time if you try to bother to email me. We don't do nasty, we only do nice. Do we have any nice comments, Al, before we
Yeah, we do have a few comments. Nettie had a couple of comments. So true, living your faith in regard to what Jeff was saying. She also mentioned how appropriate my dad died 29 years ago today, and I still miss him so much. Just meaning that the grief has no timeline.
I'm going to suggest that Nettie celebrates the day. Go ahead, Al, carry on.
Marie said, "Thank you, God. I am aware of you and me. I'm alive just now. Thank you," with lots of hearts. Simon Clark says, "Hello."
Hi, Simon.
And Nettie also said, "Just beautiful. Thank you." We have a lot of Italian that I cannot translate here, but there's a lot of comments from Italy. Chris sends love. Matt says, "Hello, guys." Karen, hello. And this one, I think we could, Maria in Italian says, "Buonanotte, Rosie."
and back to her, and I'm never a Rosie. Please, I love you all, but I'm a Rosemary. All right, so thank you all for your comments. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for such great support. We really do hope you're enjoying our Everything is Attitude. I'd like to say thank you very much to Jeff Galuza. You were a star. You're always a star, and you're very, very, very inspirational. So really, on a very serious note, Jeff, thank you very much for that. Give Andrea my love, sending lots of love and kisses to her too. Al, thank you for co-hosting tonight. And again, I will mention info at everythingisattitude.com if you want to know more, if you'd like to come on the show, if you'd like to participate. You do not have to be on camera if you don't want to be, and you don't even have to give your name, or you can give a fake name or whatever it is. Please don't feel shy about that. If you're dealing with a problem, or if you need to, sort of advice about your attitude, or you feel that you have a story, as Jeff did today, that inspires us all to have a better attitude and a more positive attitude, that would be great too. Email me, Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com, and I wonder what I'm going to say next. Until I see you next time, all of you out there, please, please, please have a very, 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 hugely, very blessed day.
To you too.